Welcome to the Hope for the Journey podcast, a weekday wellness tips program presented by Dr. Denise Marie, Third Order Carmelite. Dr. Denise is a professionally qualified clinical psychologist, health and wellness professor and coach, counselor, plus medicinal herbs educator. Each Hope for the Journey podcast features a well-being key from Dr. Denise, helping you meet your self-care needs for living well. Listener discretion is advised because this and other Hope for the Journey episodes may contain discussions surrounding behavioral health problems and other actual potentially triggering topics.
Good day and hello everyone. Welcome back to Hope for the Journey. I hope things are coming along okay for you today. My name is Dr. Denise, and on today's episode of the podcast, I will be talking about problems, which is a psychological self-care key for living well. The old-fashioned advice to quote-unquote talk it out is still valuable today. Talking about the problems that we wrestle with in our daily life still helps very much. Not only when we really just need someone trustworthy to release what's on our minds and hearts to, but also when we do not fully know how to remedy for ourselves what needs resolving. However, are you a person who has made it a habit to avoid talking about your problems? Someone who is used to keeping what is troubling you inside? Now, are you aware of what the reasons might be for doing so? Why is it that you are keeping what is troubling you inside? What are your particular reasons? Are you one who says you have no time to sit down for talking about your problems? Or you don't believe it can help? Or that you are not in the habit of speaking aloud what it is you're wrestling with inside? Or you're uncomfortable sharing because talking about your problems involves getting to feeling and emotions? Or you think you will seem dumb for sharing what has been troubling you? Or you don't like the idea of someone on the outside examining your private life stuff? Or you're concerned that if you start to talk about your problems, it will all be too overwhelming for you, and so you won't actually be able to get through the conversation. Or maybe you think it is a weakness to get to a point of feeling overwhelmed because you are usually always quote unquote so strong. Or you think, why bother to talk things out because you really don't think there is a remedy for the problematic matters in your life. Or you are imagining that if a person you know hears what it is you are struggling with, you will never be looked at in the same way as you were before. That in some way, shape, or form you'll lose face. Or do you say the problem will work itself through on its own timetable anyway, so there is really no need to talk it out with someone else? Or perhaps you have had bad memories of opening up to one or more people in your life in the past and so have made a negative inner vow to never approach someone to talk over problems again. Yet you might be surprised to learn that there is actually human research evidence that gives some insight into why it is a plus for our well-being to speak to problems aloud. Talking about problems has been shown to have not only real physical benefits, but also psychological ones. So, regarding the matter of physical benefits, if you are a person who avoids talking about problems, the brain part called the amygdala, which especially gets going when there are hair-raising life events, as it works alongside your whole limbic system, the amygdala practices the following. The amygdala can take first place in responding to the challenges in your life to the point of even overriding your own more logical thought processes. In this way, you would become so emotionally overwhelmed that you run away when it is better to fight through your challenges, or you go and fight through things when it is actually better to pull back and away from the challenges so you can regroup. Returning to the research data that helps with understanding why it is a wellness resource to speak problems aloud to another person, there is research from South Methodist University which indicates that writing out or talking about traumatic experiences has a positive effect on the human immune system and health status, which especially makes sense because holding back one's circling and circling thoughts and burying alive or suppressing discomforting feelings amounts to labor output. This overworking within oneself is a source of stress, excessive effort for both brain and body to handle. Therefore, it makes sense that you would be more vulnerable to not only feeling bad inside from not talking about your problems, but also be at risk for getting sick. So beyond physical benefits of talking about problems, there are also real psychological benefits. And it is good to bear in mind when reflecting upon personal problems we face from a psychological standpoint that our human struggles typically carry strong emotional charges within us, the most common emotions being fear and/or anger. Then, getting back now to the psychological benefits of talking about problems, here is my list. You're speaking out about your life challenges with another, first, helps with emotional processing. And for those of you interested, there is a previous podcast I made which is called Feeling Your Feelings, and in it I discuss in more detail Dr. Baker's work in the UK with his research team about this matter of emotional processing. So anyway, speaking out about life challenges helps with this emotional processing so that discomforting and even painful feelings do not end up being placed under ice, that is, suppressed. And related to this experience of emotional processing is some research coming out of UCLA, which has shown that, quote unquote, affect labeling, in other words, attaching the right words to the feelings and emotions you're experiencing, can lessen that reaction of your brain's amygdala in service of your intellect or thinking guiding your feelings in the face of stressful life events. In other words, quote unquote, putting your feelings into words, end quote, is really a plus sign for your wellness, not only labeling discomforting feelings, but also even naming your pleasing feelings. Now, continuing on with my list, talking about problems also has the benefit of helping you to sort through your thinking related to the stressful and other life events of the day, which might even include not overlooking mulling over a couple of pleasant events. Talking about problems also helps you break out of negative patterns of thinking and establish better thought patterns. Helps to grow your communication skills, helps develop your critical thinking skills by the practice it offers figuring things out to better your situation. Talking about problems helps reduce the load of relationship conflict that you carry, so any burdens don't add up into negative health conditions. Talking about problems helps improve your mood about your situation, helps you get back some of the lost energy, helps you develop plans of action for improving your life, helps strengthening your social skills. Can even clarify that the troubles you have been facing are at a significant enough level of seriousness to call for services like life coaching and or perhaps therapeutic type of counseling. And you can approach receiving such services as more like personal life training sessions than visits for mental health treatment. Plus, for sure, it is critical that you get a good match to a good coach or therapeutic counselor. So if at first you don't succeed in finding the right one, feel free to try again. At this point, let's turn to the matter of how best to talk about the issues we struggle with. With whom do we speak? Who best to seek for lending us an ear? Which kind of person? I recommend first someone who really knows how to understand and offer advice about a broad range of life challenges. Also, someone with proven wisdom who is living well on just about all fronts of life. Someone who is known to have helped others turn around their lives for the better. Not just for the short term, but for the long term. Not just someone who is popular or conveniently located, or someone you have known for years, who may not be the best person or the most objective person to help you out with the problems you're facing. Not a person who likes doling out advice to others. And not someone who quickly takes charge and tries to solve your problems for you. Note well, though, that if you do know a lot more than one person who has a good listening ear, it is important to keep in mind the old saying that, quote, too many cooks spoil the broth, unquote, and to reasonably contemplate who would be at the top of the list to approach for your current challenging situation or situations. And if you are someone who has one or more support groups, group member availability doesn't guarantee that you will receive the wisdom that you need there. Also, it is not a good idea to overdo it with your talking about problems aloud to others. You could become so focused on your negative life experiences that you become a life complainer without gaining any benefits of insight on your problems or relief from them. So It is important to take at least short breaks from getting so worked up over problems, because overdoing it can bring the opposite effect of extending the time of some things that are bothering you and actually make you feel more stressed out in the end. Plus, it is also important to keep in mind not to wear out the one or two trusted listening ears you have found in your life. And that there is a best time and a best place for everything under heaven, including a time for talking things over with another. Of course, this would be different if it is a crisis situation where you may very well need to interrupt your trustworthy listener, your go-to person. Now, regarding today's podcast, you might also be mulling over what types of problem to choose to talk about with someone else. And here is just a brief list for you to consider. Things that have you feeling imbalanced, out of whack, like something is off. Problems that are keeping you up at night. Issues that keep your thoughts swirling around in your head, such as transitioning to a new job, too many arguments at home, breaking up and out of a bad relationship, having an unexpectedly sick family member, and so forth. Of course, talking about problems does not mean a quick fix or that a situational miracle will come or even guarantee a happily ever after outcome. Yet, talking about problems is well worth the effort. It serves improvement in the functioning of different wellness dimensions in your life, serving your overall body and soul well-being. Now, one example of someone who does not hold back on talking about her problems is Johnny Erickson Tada, a victim of a serious driving accident. Johnny has spent 52 years of her life in a wheelchair, with a life of struggles due to her physical disabilities. Yet she has a history of talking plainly, which extends to this day, about her ongoing physical problems, which include pain, issues with her lungs, even recurring cancer. And she understands that talking to others about these life challenges helps her psychologically, spiritually, and even relationship-wise. Another example of a person who has come to the conclusion that talking about problems is of value is Donny Osmond, child star and singer and actor. He has publicly revealed experiencing panic attacks and stage fright when appearing on stage. Yet with the good advice of his trustworthy wife of 44 years, that is Debbie Osmond, Donny has received the needed support through all his famous life's ups and downs. And now he is actually living free from serious stage fright. Donny even speaks openly about what he has gone through, and he has stated that his hope is to help others by telling his story of struggles. I think you can conclude that Johnny's and Donny Osmond's routines of readily talking about problems is something they have determined to be a necessary part of living well. In my contemplating which music to discuss on today's podcast to support the value of talking about problems, I recalled the Neil Diamond song entitled "You Don't Bring Me Flowers." The song presents the very candid scenario of a heartfelt spouse-to-spouse talk, speaking to problems that have developed in their relationship. The lyrics of the song are very real in reference to the negative outcome of a couple who has hardly been speaking to each other, alongside other couple bonding issue problems. This song, You Don't Bring Me Flowers, clearly encourages couples and even others to not sweep problems under the rug, to not allow them to grow and fester until the situation turns even more serious and will then require more time and effort to resolve. Talking about problems today is a good psychological strategy to prevent a worsened situation tomorrow. To encourage you at this juncture in the podcast toward more care for you and especially your vocal wellness, I present the following: some health foods and plants that are associated with today's psychological self-care key of talking about problems. And keep in mind that each of these health foods and plants is for consulting with your doctor about before you take steps toward applying them for your health care yourself. So I bring up these health foods and plants today for enhancement of vocal health. There is borage tea, which can have a voice strengthening effect. Peppermint, an herb which contains menthol that has soothing properties for the voice. Peppermint can also be served up as a delicious tea. And there is also having a glass of lemonade or even drinking warm lemon water. These also have properties that are beneficial for the voice. Though once more, it is best for me to point to your talking these health foods and plants over with your doctor. I am reviewing them for this podcast because they are gifts in nature that could be used to support your taking steps to talk about your problems with another person. I also have something brief to share with you today, a post-it I have written up to help encourage you to talk about problems with someone trustworthy. So I hope you will take to heart these words from a friend, actually words from Proverbs chapter 19, verse 20. Listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. Next, there is one additional item that I had in my plan to bring up today, and that is a phone app for recording your life happenings called Chat Journal. It comes from a company called Agile Telescope. The Chat Journal app is one that, quote, lets users input text into their journals in a chat-like, bite-sized format, end quote. Chat Journal is like an audio diary, yet works as if you're practicing talking to a trusted friend. This app even has a quote-unquote questionnaire bot, a rudimentary chatbot that also asks questions about your day, end quote. Plus, besides this particular app called Chat Journal, you can also bear in mind that there are other avenues of help available at our Hope for the Journey podcast resource center, which is located on Instagram at Cause for Hope. Additionally, it is my pleasure to close this podcast by letting you know how much I appreciate this time spent with you today, especially to pass along the tips I have about the life-strengthening value of talking about your problems. And please know that I personally wish you more hope for the journey of greater well-being.
The Hope for the Journey program airs weekday evenings from 7:45 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Instagram and YouTube. Dr. Denise thanks you for listening to her Community Wellness podcast and wishes you to keep in mind that there is cause for hope of more well-being.